listening to the Ocean Rowing Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Painter, physical therapist and owner of Strong and Empowered Rowing. I help people continue their love of rowing without aches and pains. Along the way, I decided I wanted to row across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm finding it super hard to get in touch with previous ocean rowers and find the answers on how to make this possible. So this podcast is to share my story and what I learn as I get ready for and ultimately cross the Atlantic Ocean. Hear from experts in different areas and from others who have completed ocean rows. So anyone who wants to do this has easy access, and we can share our stories with the world.
I've always been like the only girl in a group of boys. It's a bit different when all those guys are all naked and they're rowing, and the only person you see for the 2 months you're at sea, a bit less than 2 months.
All right, you just heard from our guest of this week, which I'm super excited to share with you guys. She was the only female in a group of 5 to row across the Atlantic in the 2019-2020. They did their own expeditions. They were not part of a group. One of her teammates, actually had experience crossing oceans, and she herself actually had experience sailing across the ocean for 21 days when she was younger. And it was really cool to just hear her experience, and she gave insight that I haven't heard from other people yet. So I would definitely listen to this podcast episode, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, so I'll just tell briefly how this happened and how come, because it happened really quickly in my case. I was basically called by a university friend last July, and he asked me if I was ready to actually cross an ocean. He was crossing an ocean at the end of the year, and he was asking me if I wanted to join. So if you may have heard other rower story, usually it's much more long time preparation, at least 2 years. So I got into that project. I was the last one. We were 5 people, 4 guys and 1 girl. We thought about being 6, but then it was quite late to get another person on board. So we had some people interested, but it was quite difficult to get them after it. And the thing is, it was possible to do it in such a quick ways, because our captain Patrick Favre had done it already 5 times, and he wanted to go with a crew anyway this year. So he already knew the boat he wanted. He had not bought it yet, but he knew which boat he wanted to buy, and he already had set most of the crew. He was also quite knowledgeable about how to organize a race, how to organize an ocean crossing, although he's really good at knowing what is needed on the boat. He's a bit less good at organizing stuff. So it was also very interesting to have to get used to someone who's just very different at organizing stuff, knowing that the 4 others, the 4 crewmates, we were all engineers and really nerdy about organization. So we had to face a very different way of working, but that worked really well at sea, at least. That was the main thing. So back to the story. I was called in July, and we started. I was already quite fit already, so that's good. And we just had our ocean survival training camp, just to make sure that we all knew the safety instruction. And then we all trained very separately, and we just met the week before going. So it was really last minute. We didn't know each other really well. That was really interesting. That's not something I recommend. I would recommend everyone to just spend a lot of time with the other people. But at least we had to be very polite and respectful, because we had to discover each other. So that's also a very cool thing. It's a bit like moving in a house where you don't know anyone. So we discovered each other. Patrick had prepared the whole boat, set the food. So he just explained us the 2 weeks before. We just sat together and just knew all the safety instructions, how everything would be working. So that was pretty good to just have a good intense preparation of the last weeks. And then once the wind was okay, we just set off. We were not part of a race, so it was very flexible. Although because some of us were taking just a break from work, we were not that flexible on the window to go. So it was really interesting. It went really quickly. In terms of preparation, we were all very different. For me, I think it made quite a lot of sense, well, a bit more sense than others, on the boat at least. So when I was a kid, I used to live on a boat with my parents for a bit more than a year. We crossed the Pacific Ocean on a sailing boat. That was I was a little kid. I was 10 at the time, and we were with my siblings, all 6 on the boat. So I got used to the sea. I got used to the not seeing anyone for a few days. The longest crossing we had was 21 days at the time, so it's already quite long. So I knew I was not afraid of having the sea around, and just being very patient, and just something I really enjoyed. Even though I'm a really bad sailor, so I knew it could not be possible on my side. So, and the other side, I was also a rower, had been a rower for 4 years, which is quite young for a rower, but quite intensively in university. I joined the university series training team in France and in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we were having like the usual 8 trainings a week, very intense, having our own physio following us. It was quite serious. And it was good because that was the year before, and then I went back to London, had more time to rest, because I think resting is so much important, and rowers don't know it. So I was still very fit from my previous years of rowing, still having this ocean, a bit of knowledge, also knowing that I didn't know so much about the ocean, but that was good. And that's why I thought I was pretty ready in terms, at least mentally speaking and physically speaking. I also trained a lot, just also in the gym, to make sure I would prevent all the injuries I had. I had past injuries, and you may know it, so you were physio, but I had like broken ribs and usual rower stuff. But then I knew what I had to make sure my core would be okay, that my knees would also be okay, and that worked well. So yeah, I was pretty well more prepared than I thought. I thought I would be terribly bad, and I was not enough. But when I compare it to the guys on my boat, it was actually pretty good. And I did not get any injuries on the ocean. So
hey,
I was very proud.
so
Yeah,
awesome to hear.
nobody blisters. So obviously I had huge calluses before going, so I had no blisters. I know
Nice.
really that. I mean, unless a few sprained fingers, but that's just with the length of effort, and I don't count this as injury.
Did you end up with like claw?
So not. So that was the most important thing I was doing at sea. I was always, after each session, stretching my fingers. So we had different shifts. The shifts were between 1 hour to 4 hours. They were variable depending on the night, was 4 hours, and the day 1 hour. So after a night shift, usually it was a bit it was a bit hard to move, but that was okay because we had been stretching. But when we arrived the day after, we could not move our hands. So it was just like, because we had been sleeping for more than 4 hours, and then the hands were not used to not move for such a long time. But yeah, that's a very cool question. And the guys were a bit, so the captain was well prepared, was 50, he had done that a few times, he knew how to train. Another rower was also very good. And then the 2 others, it was interesting. We had a very good athlete on the boat. He was in the military as well. He'd been training. He had done semi Ironman, so pretty fit. But he had never been at sea more than a day. So it was very interesting because he's a really good sport person on the land, but he's completely different at sea, and he's not expecting this. So, and I think we were all very surprised by his capacity of being so wimpy and so complaining all the time. So that, yeah, from all of us, he's maybe the one who pushed the least, and who did the most break, but we had to accept it, and it was really hard for our mind, but because people are just reacting in a very different way on the ocean, and it's quite unbelievable when you're on the land that people are changing so much their personality. And then the other person, it was the other way around. We used to call him the tourist because he was not so trained. He was really he's really tall and quite strong, but he's not doing any sport. but he's also very, very resilient. So once he was at sea, he was the one who's always really, really quiet, really calm. He was a good buffer between us because he would never get angry at anything, but he would put the pressure down. So very good person to have. And he was actually rowing quite hard. So very interesting to see that we had very different levels of preparation, but the way it happened at sea was very different from what was expected for all of us. And yeah, something I would recommend for anyone is just to spend a lot of days at sea with the crew or by yourself, just to make sure that you know how it is and not seeing the land, because some people are really getting crazy with this. And you have to make sure that you'll enjoy it, because otherwise it's going to be pretty painful for a lot of days. Yeah, I've been talking a lot already, and this just on the.
No, this is awesome. That's why I like to just kind of see where it goes, and then it brings up questions. So you've been out for 21 days at sea. The other person rowed five across all the Atlantic.
Yeah, 5% of the Atlantic rowing, but also I think 5 times sailing.
Okay.
So yeah.
So for somebody who doesn't, so you're the first person to mention like, hey, just get experience not seeing land and just like get out there. So for people who don't have that experience, what would you recommend they do? Like, how should they do that?
I'd say like find sailing friends. It's okay that rowing is an important part, but you'll have all the way to learn how to row. And that, I'd say that for the people, because those guys, 2 of those guys didn't know how, like, pretty much how to row before going. They had done a few sessions for that, so make sure you enjoy rowing. But the main thing is really spending time at sea and spending time at sea when you don't see the land. So it's going with some, have to have a captain maybe, but going with some friends or going by yourself on the sea for a sailing trip for a bit of time. And for me, it's maybe one of the most critical thing, and also because to be a good ocean rower, and the captain was also sharing this point of view, you have to be a good sailor, because you need to know how to take the waves properly, how to take the wind properly, how things may changing at sea, and all this knowledge of the sea is really helpful. So I was talking to another ocean rower, and he was telling me that if he had to choose between a sailor or an Olympic rower, he'd take a sailor, just because this knowledge is really helpful. So I just say go sailing, and longer, like what, for more time than just a day, or just try to avoid seeing the coast just to see. But I know it's pretty difficult to find some time for it, but it's the best advice I'd say.
Awesome. No, thank you. That's extremely helpful. I was looking into sailing places. Like I'm in the middle of Colorado, so there's not a lot of ocean, or there's zero ocean. But basically it's how can I've been looking into like sailing classes, and they like go out on a lake, but nothing ocean based. So it's a good perspective where maybe I go to Maine and go sailing. So it's cool. So you said June, July is when you were entered into the group?
Yeah,
And then you
exactly.
guys took off in November?
Yeah.
All right, November 11th-ish or something?
Yeah, 22.
22.
Yeah.
And then, so throughout that, you were training on your own. You did all the courses and classes to kind of be prepared. Did you feel prepared enough, having like that 2 weeks worth of stuff?
No, not at all. I thought I was really not prepared, and I actually, once I was at sea, I realized I was more prepared than I thought. But it's also due to my personality, I'm never really sure about what I'm doing, and I'm never very confident about myself. Even if you were asking me now, do you feel confident about crossing the ocean? I knew I've done it, but I would not say I'm feeling confident and ready for it. Um, um, so yeah, I mean, some people could spend their life preparing for something. You just have to sometimes yeah, just
Go.
be like, okay, you may not be fully prepared, but just go. So just setting a few essential stuff, and then the other stuff will be just additional, and just being really clear about those essential stuff that is. So for example, the ocean survival training was good because I knew I knew what was the critical things to think about at sea, like the critical, just in order to make sure that all the safety measures are really clear. So it's also something we did with the captain the 2 weeks before, just like knowing that for each situation that may be critical, you know exactly what you have to do. So that once you're in the situation, or once you know that you may be in the situation, for example, when we were in the stormy day, in my head, I was just thinking of repeating to myself what were the measures to be thinking about. It's not the moment where you can remind everyone what should be happening. So that was good to have this ready really clearly. And on my side, I knew that I had a few things like physically that I wanted to make sure that I was fit enough. But that's it. No other training. I was really taking care of it because I tend to be a person who overtrains really easily. So the last 2 months I was trying to take it really easy, doing not too much sport, but just gaining a lot of sleep, which is very tricky also, because then you feel even less prepared. You're like, yeah, but I mean, 2 months ago I was much more fit than that. Yes, but I was maybe more tired as well. So I think that period was really hard. But yeah, getting the last 1 to 2 months being just very ready in your mind as well, because this, you always have to keep in mind that you may die as well, so you have to be ready for it. So I had all my papers ready at home. I had in my head everything was really clear, and I think that being peaceful with yourself was more important, even though preparation wise I would have done 100 other things differently, but that's it. Yeah, really.
I saw from your post you brought what, like 2 shorts, 2 pairs of shirts, a pair of sneakers, a Kindle. Did you use your Kindle at all?
Not at all. No, no. And also because I'm not a, I like books by themselves, like real books. So I had a Kindle and a real book. I read the book, but it was really tricky. So it was like 1 page per day was, or 2 pages, and then I would feel okay, that's enough. But it was good to have something to also think about. So having something from the outside world that keeps you thinking, because otherwise your thoughts are always oriented towards one thing, towards always rowing. But having one thing from the outside is really cool, because you can think about it. So when my mates were calling their families much more often than I did. So every time they had news about their girlfriends or their family, everyone was just asking questions because we were so happy to have news. So we had one thing. One of them was actually calling his family every day, because he really needed this. So we were receiving every day one charade, or one tricky thing to discover, or one news from the outside. So there was like one thing from the outside that we would learn, and that would be like, we would think about it the whole day, or it would be one question like, do you know, list 5 birds that start with D, or which. But that was good because that would keep us thinking. So we had one of this per day. I had my book to get away, and I also had letters from my friends and families.
Nice.
And that, I think that was the most helpful thing that I could have taken. The other guys were really sad not to have taken any of these. So I was not calling my family very often, maybe once a week, but at least I had letters for every day. I did not plan this. I just asked my friends and family to send some, and I ended up having quite a few. And yes, it puts a bit more weight, but the emotion you get from having them is so much bigger. I discovered a lot about my family through it, because letters are really qualitative, and at least because you have one a day, and so the only news from the outside. I read it 4 or 5 times and just rediscovered meanings, and get me thinking for the whole night. So yeah, that's something I'm really happy I've taken. And had my so it seems that I had a lot of leisure things, but I just was taking 2 minutes for a letter, and then I would have those 5 minutes reading my book and 5 minutes to write my journal, and that would be it. That would be it for leisure time. That would already be a lot. Like I was considering that was a lot of waste of time, like 15 minutes of not sleeping. God, that was a lot of waste of time.
So you said you rode 4 hours at night and then 1 hour during the day. How many of you were rowing at a time? 3?
Yeah, so at beginning 3 rowing, then 2 sleeping, and then inverted.
Okay.
So the teams were not equal, but then we got a problem with the steering, the autopilot, as a lot of crews. So we had to have always one person steering, and then in that case, the group of three would be steering the group of 2 as well. So there'd be always 2 people rowing.
Okay.
And so at night we were sleeping. So we have 4 hour shift, and then 2 hours and a half, 1.5 hour, and 1 hour. So it was a lot of unequal shifts, and it take a bit of time to get used to. Okay, how much time am I supposed to row now? But it's actually, I thought it was pretty nice because it would define really clearly the different moments of the day, and we would be doing different things depending on the length of the shift. So a short one would be just for sleeping or just for eating, while a long one you have a bit more time to maybe have 5 minutes of leisure for the 1.5 hour, and then the 4 hour would be for sleeping, whatever you have to do. So that was good to actually put your activity depending on the time you had. I thought that was helpful. It's a big debate, I think, between rowers if like you do shift of 2 hours, or it really depends. I think like 2 hours during the midday when it's 30 degrees, it's just too tricky. Like I thought the 1 hour in the midday was much more longer than the 2.5 hour in the evening.
Huh. With the weather, I would expect the same thing. I talked to somebody who rode like at night and slept in the day. They were a solo, but like it's amazing how everybody's got different shift, and it's cool to see how people handle it differently. But I think you're the first person I've talked to in a group of 5. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was not, well, we thought we would be 6, but we didn't manage to be 6. But 5 was good. I quite like the number. It was good enough because I didn't know these people. Being less than that would have been very intimate with people you didn't know. More than that would have been really tricky, especially being the only girl. That was interesting. That also means that for sleeping, there was the guys were having the cabin by themselves, unless a crew. So me and another rower, we were sharing the cabin.
Okay.
And that was interesting as well. We were quite close. We were really good friends. He's the one who called me, so that I think that was helpful. But because it was really tiny, so when I was sleeping, I had my head above my hands above my head, and I had to just like keep them really close because I didn't have enough space to put my arms along my body. It was too narrow for both of us, so because we were just next to each other, just basically having my head in his armpit, and that's it for the whole. So it was interesting, having no moments of privacy. I thought it was okay until after a month. After a month, it became a bit hard to have no moment at all where you're completely alone. Because the other guys, when they were not rowing, they had the cabin and was shut, and so they had moments where they were alone, but not us. And I think for us it was extra difficult to have this. And when the autopilot broke, and then we had moments where the other person would be steering, I would have cabin by myself after 1.5 months, and it just felt so nice. It's like, oh my god, I can do whatever I want. I can just like spread and have the whole bed for myself. That's so nice. So yeah, that was interesting.
Is that because you guys you were on the same shift? Is that why
Yeah,
you never had time alone?
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. How was it being the only girl?
Oh, I didn't care at first. I really didn't care at first. Like I went to engineering school where we were really little girls in the school. I've always been like the only girl in a group of boys. It's a bit different when all those guys are all naked and they're rowing, and the only person you see for the 2 months you're at sea, a bit less than 2 months. So it was a bit tricky after a while, just not having anyone who is, and that's very sexist to say so, but just kind and nice and behaving differently. So yeah, but most of it was really nice. Like those guys are just treating me as another person, very respectful. There was the moment where I had my period as well. Very tricky moment. I was expecting not to have it, because when I was a rower in selection, I was not having my period. The intensity of training was too high. So I was like, oh great, well I don't even need to do it. And I even got sponsorship from period companies, and I was like, no, I don't need that. I won't have my period, guys. And then it happened, and I was, oh my god, no. So that was not funny.
You didn't have anything with you because you didn't expect to have it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really not funny, especially when you're the only girl. But it's fine.
I'm so sorry.
Things happen, and that's how it is.
Yep.
But that's quite funny, because then I discovered that my body was not actually suffering as much as I thought, because and this is due to the fact that we had a lot of, I think it's due to the fact that we had a lot of food. We had a lot of snacks as well, and I think that's why my body was okay.
Cool. So one of my favorite questions is, what was your favorite snack?
Oh, that's a good one. Nuts, definitely nuts. I love that. Almonds or peanuts or whatever. That was a favorite one. We had also some small shots of honey sometimes for it, and it was pretty cool. When waking up at 2 a.m, I was keeping them for my moment at 2 when I have to wake up after a 4 hour sleep. That's a good thing to keep you up. And we had like organization to have like every 3 days we were having a snack pack. So you organize yourself to do whatever you want. So some of them were eating all of them at once. I was keeping things a bit like a squirrel to eat it as I wanted. And then on every 7 days we were having the Sunday pack, and then that would be a special treat where we would have something special in it. So the guys were having tuna, and they were really happy with this tuna can or Pringles or Coca-Cola. So they were really happy to have this. I was a bit less into it, but I know that they were really happy with it. And it's just the excitement of having something special on the 7th day, because it makes every week be a bit special.
I like that. All right. So they did like tuna and Coke. What was in your 3-day packs?
3-day packs, we had a Mars bar. But just one for 3 days. A Mars bar, a small, like 3 or 4 candies, some peanuts, and also 3 smashed smashed apple puree. So that
like applesauce.
Yeah, applesauce, but like an individual pack that you can take. So these were like the 3 days pack, and then you can like divide it as much as you want.
Nice.
It's quite limited, but it's quite funny because on the boat, like we started having this stock market of all the snacks. So you can have a Mars bar against a certain amount of other stuff, and it was really fun because we didn't like the same things, but they were like higher stocks, and depending on the trip also like it kind of evolved. When you're all tired of eating the same stuff, you're like, oh, okay, suddenly there's a rise in peanuts or in something else. It's quite funny.
That's cool. I really like the idea of like something to look forward to on different days. Did you guys do something for Christmas? Because you were gone Christmas too, right?
Yeah, we're Christmas and New Year. We had we had peanut butter and a pot of chocolate also, like chocolate sauce, and we destroyed it. We were getting sick, but we knew that we were opening at noon, and we had 2 hours break for that time, and we knew that if you were not eating your part now, they would eat yours. So we were just like taking so much of it. I got completely sick because we're not used to having so much sugar at once. Very exciting. And we also had taken a secret Santa. Everyone was bringing one gift for each other on the sea. That was quite nice to have like a small thing, just a thought about someone. That was nice to have.
Nice.
Quite recommended that. And we were quite lucky because on the day of Christmas there was no wind at all. Well, quite unlucky for that, but we got to have our first swim on Christmas Day. So that
first
was
what?
Just swimming the sea.
Oh, swim.
So that was a nice thing to have.
So you went a while before you could swim, just because the water was rough?
Yeah. We were pretty lucky in terms of weather because the first week was we wanted to leave on a week where it was not too much wind, just to get accustomed to sea and waves, which I think was good. for like a less experienced crew. So we had the first week that was pretty sunny and good because everything broke on that week, so we spent a lot of time repairing. And then the second and third and fourth week were much more wavy. That was much more difficult. But it was increasingly hard. So we started with 3 meters waves and then got to 6 meters. But then by the time we got used to it, so that was pretty good. And then at one point we were really exhausted because everything was smelly and wet and nothing would dry in these conditions. And that's also the time, like I think halfway we started having rain, but we did not have rain before, so very lucky. And after a while we had a few weeks of very quiet, and then that was really hard for the mine, but differently. And the last 2 weeks were quite a mix of both. So when we got sick of one, we'll be like, oh god, I wish it was calm and quiet, and then the day after it's quiet and you're like, oh god, I wish there was big waves. So we were quite lucky weather-wise, so we have seen lots of different stuff, never too rough, but quite increasingly difficult.
Gotcha. So you mentioned you had a bunch of trouble the first week. What did you have to fix?
So we had autopilot breaking a few times. The battery we managed to empty completely once. So once the battery get empty, it's quite tricky to get it back to the right level. We were a bit, and this is because the connection to the solar panels were not working correctly. So it broke as soon as we left. So the solar panels were not working anymore. But luckily it was just the connection between the solar panels and the battery. So the guys were really good mechanics, and I'm really happy with them, that because I'm really bad. So they repaired this part, which was the first thing, and then the battery took a bit of time to refill itself. So that's why we were steering most of the time the first week, just to not avoid using too much of it. So yeah, solar panels, autopilot, and then the third thing was the desalinizer. It broke, but it was a very silly thing. I think it was just a pressure issue. And luckily, one of the guys on the boat used to work in a desalinizer factory. So
wow.
That was a really, really useful person to have. But no, basically it was a really simple problem, but we repaired it as well. But this is why, like, when people looked at us as our trajectory, we left from the Canaries and then started going to the island of, oh god, which island is it? To Cape Verde. Again, because we thought, okay, if the desalinizer is not working, it's going to be really tricky. But then it was working again, so we had a really weird trajectory of just like not really knowing where to go. That was fine. That was a really hard day where everything broke at once, but yeah, wow. We repaired it. But autopilot, it's really something that really, and this is because the autopilot was outside. Some boats have it inside. And it's better just because the waves are breaking on it so strongly that it just destroys it slowly by little. Gotcha. So it's much more expensive if it's not for us. That's why it was not done, because it was more expensive and we had no time to put the autopilot inside. So we had 5 of them and they were all outside, but we managed to all destroy them.
You had 5 autopilots at all? Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Were they all the same brand?
Yeah.
What brand were they?
I can't remember. I'll tell you after.
Okay. I'm going to start asking that question because this thing is breaking so much. It's almost like, is it worth getting an autopilot?
Yeah, I know. It's so what we had is like we had I don't know what's the English for it, winch. So
yep, wrench.
To like put the rope around it. So no, winch, not wrench. So well, it's in French it's winch, I don't know, but basically something we had made a system to be able to steer manually more easily, so that would like keep the ropes in place.
So you didn't foot steer?
No, we didn't foot steer. We had to do it with the hand, so meaning we could not row at the same time, but it was more or less done so that it would be comfortable if it happened. So just so that, it may happen. And yeah, it's really frustrating, but it's really unfair, and it depends. I think it just doesn't just depend on the brand, it also quite on luck.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start asking if people have it inside or outside. That's a great question to ask. Thank you.
No worries. Yeah, hopefully.
I feel like probably more than half of the people, there's brakes.
Yeah, of autopilot, or you mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I would think even more than that. It's either autopilot or battery as well. Batteries. I live on a boat in London, and on our boat as well, it's also the batteries always braking. So having good knowledge on batteries is quite helpful.
So you live on a boat in London?
Yeah.
Well, you just love the water.
Yeah. I'm good. Just like now, I'm at my own parents. I'm on land, and it really feels weird. But yeah, I quite like
So
being in
did
the
you
mud.
get motion sick at all then when you started?
Sorry?
Did you get motion sick at all when you started?
Slightly, maybe the first day I was. Yeah, the first day, because we had like side waves. That was very uncomfortable. But just one day, and then we got used to it. One of the guys had it for more than a week, so that was more painful for him. And
So I can imagine if you are already on the water, you're kind of used to that movement.
Yeah, but that's really different. Like London canals are nothing. Like you would feel like maybe it's like an earthquake, but not like a wave. Like nothing like an ocean wave.
Gotcha. That's fair.
Yeah, and in terms of repairing, also, like one thing is, our captain was maybe not very good at repairing. The other people on the boat were, but at least he was really good at taking everything double or triple. So the front cabin was the like secret cabin, and where everything was he stored, but really precisely he knew exactly what kind of things he had, and everything in double triple, which was helpful because we ended up using a lot of random stuff in double or triple. So
Like what?
the most common thing would be oh god, I need to look for the word in English.
Sorry, I'm testing your skills.
That's really good. That's the kind of thing I actually have trouble to find it in French as well. Fuse, yeah, fuse.
Fuses. Okay.
Fuses is something we used a lot, also because everything was breaking. And we were testing things when repairing. So having 4 fuses, but 20 of them, that's good.
All right.
Of them. Every connection system for all the electrical, but every connection system has to be double, triple. Also, the one that may be subject to the water, because may get inside and then it gets corroded very quickly. I don't think we had we had 2 batteries, but I don't think we didn't have an extra like replacement one, but having 2 batteries was like really necessary. I think it was mostly like electronic parts. Then seating, we had seatings. We had another like seat in case, because his last trips it always broke down, but not this time. So really good.
Like the wheels?
No, both, like the seat and the wheel, just in case. So we had a complete. I think we had 2 seats and 2 foot planks. The wheels, we had a lot of them just in case. We never repaired it. We actually did our own system with roller skater wheels.
Nice.
It worked well. We did not have to replace anything actually from the outside of the boat. It was only electronics in our case, but because we're lucky, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. What did you do anything for your seat, like for sitting on it?
We had you mean cushion wise?
Yep.
We had 7 levels. So the captain had prepared 4 levels. So we had already seats that were quite comfortable, but then on top of it, we had like 4 levels of cushions to put, and that was pretty cool because you knew that if it was painful, you could like get upgraded to a bigger level, and the last level was the one that you have in the like in the pensions for old people, like very thick ones, maybe 10 centimeters, really comfortable for handicapped people. The guys ended up using it. I did not. I stayed in the first level. My butt was just like having it okay, but the guys were really happy, especially not just for the because it was painful for the muscles, but also because of all the rashes that we get on the skin, and sometimes it's just better to have something softer to sit on. So about this, like one really big thing is every time we're getting inside, getting naked, washing ourselves, washing the butt, like first thing, like washing the butt to make sure no salt on it, and then putting a really thick layer of cream on it, and then maybe like even cling film. For the worst case, we were having cling film to make sure that it would like stay inside. But that was also helpful for the guys' balls that were getting irritated to have like a lot of cream and then cling film. The least sexy thing you can have, but that was the most important thing. I mean, especially halfway, like we could barely sit because it was so painful of rashes, and we had been like taking a lot of care of it.
Yeah.
I was using a cream, like a hand cream that was actually for my feet, and something I've been using as a roller for a few years now. It's a feet cream, and it's really good to have more calluses. And I put that on, and I had no blisters, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
The more injuries prevention, I think that was the main thing, really, like rashes and the butt. And the first week we had a lot of gel, like arnica gel for our all our joints. That was really helpful, actually, because the first week is, I thought, the one of the most painful, because the body is just asking you, why are you doing this to me? So having a lot of arnica to put on all the joints and stretching after each session was really important. But especially the first week, you just want to sleep, but it's really important to do the hands each time, and then the one part of the body for each break was good. That was a good tip that I had.
I like that idea. Like switching it up so that it's not all at once, and then you still have time to sleep and rest and do what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea. Cool. I feel like there was another question that popped into my head and I forgot it because I didn't write it down. Dun, dun, dun. Is there anything else that you want to share that you haven't talked about? That you want somebody to know?
Well, that's tricky. Let me think.
Like if you were to go on another one, what would be something that you would wish you had or wish had done?
No, I'm just really happy to have wrote things down. That was very annoying to do. That was the thing I was really not looking forward to do every day, because that would be 5 minutes of wasting my time. But there's things, I forget things so quickly, and now having things to read again is just amazing, because the states you are at sea are a bit different, and then having this again is really really awesome. So as a personal level, so I'd say just more than recording things, and because I'm more a writing person, but more than recording things on a GoPro, having things written somewhere is something that I'm happy I've done. I hadn't done it when I was in the Pacific Ocean, when I was a kid. I had started, and then I was like, no, it's too annoying, I won't do it, and I regret it every day of my life after. So I'd say, I know it's painful, but do it.
Well done doing it and sticking to it.
Yeah, none of the guys stick to it, but pretty happy I did, at least.
Awesome. I did remember one of my questions. So you brought 2 pairs of things, and with that beginning part being super wet, did you just stay in wet clothes? Did you go naked? What did you do?
So I would actually, I took only one. I only used one set,
okay.
Just because the rest was very difficult to get access to. So I just got one set and used the same t-shirt for the whole time. I I would try to make it dry during the afternoon. If it's not too wavy, just putting it on the window outside. That would the only when I would be resting. That would be the only moment where I try to dry my stuff. And because when I was sleeping, I was naked, but then outside I would always be covered like long sleeves because my skin get burnt really easily. At night, at the end, I was naked most of the time, just because it was warm and comfortable, and for once I could do it. But there's not a lot of things that dry, but it's okay.
Everything's wet. How'd you keep your journal dry?
Everything was in there, like one or two plastic sealing bag.
Okay.
That was good. Very, very, yeah. I mean, my letters was something that I just have them by me, right next to me now. My letters were also like sold in 3 bags, so making sure they would not get wet. That was the most important thing I had. But yeah, and everything had to be really organized in the boat. We could take, and it was quite interesting actually, because we could take as many things we wanted on the boat. We had no limits in terms of weight that the captain told us. We obviously had in terms of volume, because it doesn't fit. But we just ended up using very limited amount of clothes, because every effort is difficult. So also looking for your clothes in in the cupboard, like kind of cupboard. So that's why we ended up using only one of each thing.
Gotcha.
Although having just in case something would be good, because some of the guys lost their shirts at sea, so that's good to know that something is there, but you may actually not use it. So the bag can actually be very small. The only thing I would not I would take would be my cream, my cream for my butt, for my hands, and my letters. That would be like my top thing.
All right. Love it. Thanks. I like the minimalist perspective. I'm not I don't have a lot of stuff. So I totally agree with the don't bring what you don't need kind of things. That's cool. I'm really impressed you read a book. Everyone I've talked to said they didn't touch their book.
Yeah, it's difficult, like, but I really enjoyed it actually. And it was funny. It was a adventure book about Hornblower, the Captain Hornblower. He's a captain in the 17th century, and just at sea. And it's quite fun. It was his first adventure, the first book on it, and he was discovering the sea. So at the time I was discovering the first day, he was also seasick in the book. So I thought, oh wow, okay, that relates. And then there were a few things that were relating. So having a explorer book about the sea was pretty good, because I could relate to a few things, being like, oh yeah, okay, I understand you, dude. Right. So I thought that was more helpful than the other books I had on my Kindle, which were more about philosophy or life, and that, no way I want to read this.
That's really cool to be able to relate to the book. It's really neat.
And now, do you want to do it by yourself or with the crew? Yeah, by yourself. Oh wow, that's really cool.
But I definitely need some ocean experience, because I don't have ocean experience. So I rode in high school and college, but I have not really done much on the ocean.
Yeah, that's the interesting part, and that I would really recommend. And then also, don't get afraid if you don't enjoy sailing, but you enjoy rowing. Like, there's try different things on the ocean. But I thought that was a completely different feeling. I like sailing, but I love rowing on the ocean. Like this, it's really different.
Thank you. That's a great perspective, and awesome to see you light up talking about the rowing part, because that's how I am. But I know that sailing will have its benefits, just navigation, learning how to read the ocean a little bit, and things like that. So I'll definitely try it out.
That's really cool.
It took you guys 46 days, right?
Yeah.
It's a long time to be gone from work and now back in reality.
Yeah, back for Corona, back for everything. It's quite interesting. No, but I mean, yeah, it's we all have very different feelings when we get back on land. Like, two of us just said, okay, never back on the boat, never back on the ocean. I mean, they liked it, but that's over. Where I'd be like, hey, how about we turn back and we do it? So yeah. Just very different.
Where did you guys land?
In Guadeloupe.
Guadeloupe.
So
Okay.
it's in the Caribbean as well, but it's French, so it would be easier for all the French crew that we were.
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your finish. I'm glad you made it home safe, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
No worries, and speak soon, hopefully.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Ocean Rowing Podcast. Please hit that subscribe button if you liked it. In another 2-ish weeks, there will be an update episode from me, where I'm at and what I've done. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have an amazing day.